Buenos nachos, amigos, and welcome to Record Breakers, a music podcast where a group of friends gather together to share albums with each other, an album at a time. It's like an old book club for music. I'm Petey Rave, your man with no plan. Well, man with many plans. Man with excessive plans, honestly. The dude with the tude. Here with me is my team, my squad, my crew. We've got David.
I don't think I've actually listened to an entire Taylor Swift song.
We've also got Drew.
I have.
Yeah, I've listened to one or two. And of course, we are starting a new cycle, starting a new fresh batch of episodes. We have a new guest in the fourth chair. We have the one, the only, Vincent404, aka Roberto Villegas. I usually say that.
I have probably heard a Taylor Swift album in passing.
Yes.
So I'm somewhere in between the two, between David and Drew in my Taylor Swift knowledge.
Yes. Yes. We're here to talk about music. We're not talking about Taylor Swift this time. Who knows in the future, but this time we're not talking about Taylor Swift. We're talking about
a challenge. All right.
No, it's not. It's not. It's really not.
We're here to talk about a different album. We're here to talk about something really cool, really interesting. We're going to talk about something that we get to listen to early in a sense. Something that was born from Kickstarter. A really cool little collaboration project with MC Lars, the man at the center of what is known as Lit Hop, and Mega Ran, kind of the big, almost the current godfather of nerdcore, the kind of the nucleus from which the community kind of centers around nowadays. MC Lars and Mega Ran collaborated on a album known as the Dewey Decibel System. It's a hip hop album about books. Yo.
Yep.
We're talking about. I'll talk a little bit more in depth on that in a moment. But first, let's talk about expectations.
Lit hop. I get it.
Yes, lit hop.
Before we continue, can I also give full disclosure that I also kicked into the project as well?
Yes.
And both Lars and Ran have become friends of mine in some capacity and are well known. It's funny. I have my copy like right here as well. So, we're both kind of in the same boat. You and I, PD.
I know neither of these people on a personal level. So
yes, I've hugged both of these people
forever.
So full disclosure, both Roberto and I are fully on the take.
Correct.
So this is what we call another meatball episode of the Record Breakers podcast, everybody.
Yes.
Hashtag at.
Yes. David, what were your expectations coming into this album?
Hip hop about books. I expected some interesting beats and some fun wordplay. It's exactly what it says on the tin. It's MC Lars. It's Mega Ran. I am not going to give some long-winded diatribe about what I expected. I knew exactly what it was going in.
Yeah. Drew, what were your expectations coming into this album?
I mean, I really had no, that's a lie. I've listened to quite a bit of music from both of these people. I was expecting some hip-hop beats, some smart lyrics. I was expecting maybe a sly horn thrown in because Lars is here. But besides that, there wasn't like a huge amount of expectation I had. Besides like, the name of this album sort of gives you a little bit of a hint of maybe where they're sticking most of the subject matter.
Yeah.
That they're making stuff. So.
Yeah. And Roberto, what expectations did you have coming into their announcement of the Kickstarter? Because obviously you had listened to it before, but before when they were bringing it up, what expectations did you have?
I mean, it's funny because it's not the first time that Lars and Ran have collaborated. They did I think on a couple of the I forget what they did a couple of collaborations prior, and this is not even the first time they've done literature stuff collaborations. They've done some Edgar Allan Poe kind of rhymes. So I knew I was gonna get solid rhymes, solid beats, and usually on the subject. What I didn't expect going into it, that it was gonna be an album that would give me that weird confirmation of being an English major and being able to like, oh, I know what this song's about just based on the title alone. And going like it literally was that kind of moment listening to the album. When we get more into it, I'll explain that. Yeah. But that was the part I didn't expect, that it was going to be this, oh, they're talking about Keats here. Yeah, that's Shelley. Oh, it was that kind of like weird moment in time.
Yeah. Let's get into the music. I'm going to talk about the music. Yeah, it is very much what these two bring to the table, which is smart rhymes, really great clever beats. They know who to collaborate with on a song by song basis. It is an album about literature. They have it's a song. Each of the songs tackles a different subject matter, a different book, different or even a graphic novel, and we'll get into kind of the specifics of that there later. It's fun. It's very much an expression of the joy of reading. Like it would be extremely reductive to say this is a novel song about book parody raps. Like it would be, if you were trying to like put the surface level, like this is on raps about books. It's about the joy of reading, the joy of what these stories bring to your life and bring to your imagination. It's about kind of like exploring the themes and kind of like the core kind of story themes of these books and why they're relevant, bringing up their relevance. It's about, kind of like having fun with some of the characters in these books or bringing the seriousness of these books. It's about how literature affects these two MCs, but by simply just expressing it simply by going through these books and just telling their stories, and at least a chunk of their stories, or at least taking a picture of some of the characters in a really clever, really cool way. MC Lars is always going to bring a kind of like, I don't want to say maybe a whimsy, but like a good like a good energy, a good positive energy. He's a very likable guy, and if you don't kind of like stick around, you might write it off as like, oh yeah, he's just this guy who writes funny raps. But
I believe the word you're looking for, Petey, is corny.
Yeah.
Someone described him as corny.
Whereas, but he's not. He's clever. He's fun. He has a joy in his rhyming. Mega Ran is fantastic. He's undeniable as far as his skills, and they both bring so much to the table as far as this album. I think overall it's just a really fantastic album. David, how would you describe this album musically? What would be the themes elements that stand out to you?
I don't mean to be terse or to the point about this. I just don't feel like it needs to say any more than it needs to say. This album does a great job of telling you what it is, telling you who they are, and telling you exactly what it's about, almost from go. That's not a bad thing by any means. I feel like this was a album for people that love these guys, and that's okay. I wonder if it is an album that will garner new fans or new listeners. I wonder if that will work. But there's nothing inherently wrong about making a work that is already for your hardcore fans that love you.
Mm-hmm. Drew, how would you describe this album musically?
Well, like I said, it's some hip hop beats and a lot of smart rhymes, and a lot of smart lyrics. The cool thing about it is how it mixes in. And like you said, like in different hands, parts of this would border on parody, but there is a genuine, earnest excitement about the subject matter that I think Lars and Ran both have that makes them suited to join forces for something this specific, right? There was another band that I thought of, Gatsby's American Dream, which is a very left field thing to pull up, but they also have done albums where it's all of the songs were about books in a way, and it didn't feel parody, and this doesn't either. It sort of straddles that line for me. The cool thing too is that talking about Lars in the corny aspect of it is some may consider that, and I don't think he can be, and I don't think that's bad, because there's an excitement that he has about this subject matter that comes out through that sort of corny lens, and I think that's really cool. There is it goes some places in some songs that I was not expecting, and I really appreciate it, because it's a viewpoint that was earnest and honest in places. You're using things like old romance and old literature to bring into modern the ideas of what's going on in the world right now. And I think that's really smart. And I think both of them have something to say on that, which I think is really cool to hear their side of it. But then you also have things that just like are telling the story of the book, which is cool. Again, it's something that you can feel the excitement and love they have of the subject matter coming out in this. And yeah, at times it's corny and funny, and at times it's like, oh, they're going there. All right, cool. Yeah. And I think that's really neat. I think that's really nice.
Yeah, and it works really well. Roberto, how would you describe this album musically? What would be the themes and elements?
So I wrote this as kind of a thing, because the best way I can kind of describe it, it's funny that when you, David, when you mentioned the whole idea of whether or not this is gain new fans, and I always find that tricky as well when it comes to any kind of Kickstarter project for whatever it is, whether it be board game or whatever, that usually the people who are kicking in are not only A, the hardcore fans, but B, they already know that they want this, and so it kind of has that. What I kind of describe this as, if you need a quick primer on the various aspects of literature in like musical form, like the joke being that this is the cliff notes of like so many like great pieces of literature. Like, I'm not even kidding. That's like Thoreau, Shelley to Keats. I mean, they do a song on one of my all-time favorite Percy Shelley poems, that being Ozymandias, which I when it comes to English literature, it is probably my favorite poem of that era. And definitely one of my favorite poems of just literature in general. I love that poem. So when it came to that song for me, I was like, holy crap, you're doing a song about Ozymandias. And even that, when you hear it and compare it to what's happening now, it's, oh, you can see the parallels, because that was sort of the point of that poem even then. Ultimately, I knew musically what I was going to get. It's going to be a solid beat. It's going to be good rhymes, be focused on subject, because both these MCs are legends in their own right. And yes, you could argue that Lars at times is corny, and I think that's like the hard part with nerdcore, is that it kind of always borders on that, sometimes to corny and serious, and it all depends on where you fall on the spectrum and what side of that coin you're doing. But because musically, it's not, you are like Dave was saying, it's on it says what it does on the tin. It's going to be hip hop, and it's going to be good rhymes. It's hard for me to understand if there's going to be new audience with it. I think musically, if you're already predisposed to hip hop and predisposed to nerdcore, you're probably going to like it. I don't know if it's going to convert anybody that's not predisposed to hip hop or predisposed to nerdcore to like it, because it's such a it is very much just like you were saying, Petey, a love of literature and a love of all aspects of literature. I'm like, you have to already be in that club of understanding that this, because like, again, you'll get all the other parts of it, but just because it goes so weirdly deep into all these things. I'm just like, that is like, my brain is going, yeah, I know what poem that is. Yes, I know that work. And I'm literally, listening to them like, yes, okay. It's sort of like, I think there was used to be a YouTube series. What was it? It was sort of a joke of it being not a hip hop person, but just sort of like, I forgot what it was, like not G Notes or something like that, but it was sort of a Cliff Notes if sort of done in the hip hop vernacular. I just can't remember what the damn series was called, but they were like surprisingly deep as well. And that's sort of the thing, is that it's just really good musically, really good rhymes, really good beats. It just happens to be weirdly on things like romantic poetry or American realism or all those sort of weird things in English literature that if you know, you're going to get these references. And if you don't, it doesn't matter. But I still don't know if this could, like, for example, break out to the mainstream in any capacity that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think there's a reason why it's one of those things where it's the kind of album and it's the kind of project that definitely works for Kickstarter, where you're kind of like, okay, this is something I know some of you really would love. Help us make it happen and help us know that and help us know that there's interest. So yeah, it's one of those reasons why it's like you kind of have to come with a mood. But let's talk about some of the key tracks. Let's talk about some of those songs. I can even look them up right here again. I'll highlight, of course, the first full song, 1984. Past the kind of the intro track. 1984. It's about 1984.
Good year.
It's good. Yeah, it's about
a weirdly prescient book.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, 1984 has always been a even at the time was a weirdly pressing book. It's always been a weirdly pressing book. It's never.
I thought we were just talking about Van Halen, you guys.
That too has also been. I'm kidding. No, George Orwell.
55. Wait.
I mean, George Orwell when he wrote 1984 and Animal Farm and all those things, they were pressing then and they're pressing now, and I think that also is the advantage of having this album, is that because if you're an actual, again, if you're in these sort of things, the parallels in the real life to everything.
Yeah, and then they do a really good job of speaking on that, and it's a really well made song too, and they kind of highlight a specific moment in the book, and it's really cool. We go into something like Julius Caesar, which is just a really cool, it has a really good mood to it. The instrumental is really fantastic. It has it really has a really good vibe. It's really good storytelling from all involved. I believe there was some guests. Rand, Lars, and the guest Dan Bull all kind of contributed to kind of just a solid track that has a really great mood.
I really enjoyed Dan Bull's feature on that one. Julius Caesar.
Yeah, it's a really good feature. And then something like Watchmen. It's a nice collection of nerdcore MCs, three of which, all four of which I'm gonna go see, or I will have seen by the time you're all listening, up in West Palm Beach as they're touring right now. MC Lars, MC Frontalot, MC Mega Ran, and Schaefer the Dark Lord. Yep. It's really cool, and of course, it also including Miss Eves and Quell Chris. Really cool, really cool pass the mic track about the Watchmen, about a graphic novel, and it's really well made.
Even that, in and of itself, the graphic novel has a lot of literary references and things like that. Having Ozymandias be in that, which again, we continue. Sorry.
Yeah,
also a couple tracks go.
Yeah, there's a couple of tracks ago, and it works really well, and it's really cool, and it has a really cool vibe. And of course, landing on the final track, Between the World and Me, where it's just okay, all of the corniness, all of the jokes, anything that was a remnant of a joke or humor, out the window. It's time to get real. And I think it gets real and it lands really well. It gets real in a really fantastic way. Talk about, kind of like talk about this book in an interview format with Mega Ran, taking the form of the author. I'm gonna of the author to Ta-Nehisi Coates, and it's one of those things where sometimes you can create great imagery, great poetry to speak of multiple things, but sometimes you just have to say the thing. Like, you just have to say the thing. like stop killing black folk. like just say the thing. And both from the subject matter they were pulling from and from this, they just sat down and they said the thing. They said the thing about what everybody's thinking that's affected by the world that is happening now.
Are you talking about books are tight? I read a lot.
That too. There's that too.
That was the point in the album where I started laughing because Mega Ran was like, "Okay, stop," and I was kind of at that point with the album where it was like, "Okay, I get the joke. We can move to the next song."
Yeah, but yeah, Between the World and Me is just a moment in the album that lands fantastically. David, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Really well done with the story, and I really liked the hook. Also, Jabberwocky. I felt like the hook on that song was really, really good, and the whole song had a vibe where I wrote in my notes, I could see the Jabberwockies, the dance group, doing a routine to this song. It reminded me of the Jabberwockies. If you don't know them, YouTube them, you dork. YouTube the Jabberwockies.
Won the first season of America's Best Dance Crew.
There.
I would say also for me the track that absolutely was a grand slam was Ozymandias. That was the song on the album above all of the others where I kind of lost myself in it, where I wasn't thinking, oh, this is a song about a book. And I was just thinking, this is a dope-ass song. I really liked Ozymandias a lot. And I would say the one song that kind of didn't hit the mark for me was Bartleby. That one didn't really work, but that was really the only song on the album that I kind of was like, meh, not really. But more than any of the others, Ozymandias. That song is still in my head.
Yeah. Drew, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Well, starting at the front with 1984, I really I think this has happened a couple of times for me where I don't expect as much guitar as I probably should be with my MC Lars and Mega Ran stuff. I really need to, in my recent Nerdcore, just need to be expecting more guitar than I think I'm going to get, because I'm probably going to get some good guitar stuff. So 1984 sort of hit me with that. Julius Caesar, I really liked the telling of the Julius Caesar story by really personifying each actor in that. You have the Mark Antony stuff, you have the Caesar stuff, you have the Brutus stuff, and it's sort of all and the Cassius stuff, and you sort of have it all sort of wrapped into there, and they're all telling no, this is why I did it, and just laying that out really clearly and succinctly in a rap verse, I think is really, really smart. And then I have to talk about it. It's a ska song with a dude that one of the best shows that I ever played was opening for his band. It's right there in front of me. Bartleby the Scrivener. It's a freaking ska song. Lars does this all the time where he's just like, hey, here's a ska song with a dude you probably know, and just sort of tosses it in, and it's Jared Reddick from Flippin' Bowling for Soup just on a ska track, because why not? It stacked like pancakes, and Jared Reddick on a rap album is
Yeah.
hilarious to me for all the right reasons.
Yeah. Roberto, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
For me, I mean, definitely Ozymandias. I mean, the hard part for me, and this is when it comes to the tracks, and David's kind of alluded to this, the hard part for me is separating the work being referenced and the song apart, because a lot of times listening to this album, it became, oh, they're talking about 1984. Oh yeah, I know that John Keats poem, and so it became these sort of like, am I liking this song because the fact that someone's rhyming about "Ode to a Grecian Urn," or am I liking this because it's a good song? But I think the one, and it's really the only standout track I can really think of, because I mean everything else is great. I definitely like Julius Caesar. I definitely like 1984, and you're absolutely right. The last track is amazing, but Ozymandias for me, both as a song is great, and both as a subject matter is amazing. And I think that to me may have been the standout track, because it kind of crosses that line that every kind of good literature person does, and any kind of good reader should do, is try to figure out why it is we're still talking about this work, especially if you think about how much in the past that poem is versus now, and why is it that people are still reading it? Why are people still discussing it? Why are people even rhyming about it? And I think Ozymandias is a song. Not only A, is a great hook, not only B, is it a great rhyme and it has an amazing beat, but I think that song has far more impact now in the time we live in than maybe it had back then. And even back then it had as much impact. And so it's one of those weird kind of things of like that I think this album does really good, is explain the idea of why it is we read literature from certain parts of time, and why we still talk about it and still
That's a fun.
Sorry, I'm gonna dance to the alarm. Yeah, because for me it's definitely like it's that and like Walden, but it's hard for me to explain, like, do I like this because I like the subject matter, or do I like this because it's the rhyme? And I think if I had to pick just the one track, it'd be Ozymandias, and I know I keep kind of going over and over on that point, but it's just a damn good song. It's just good, and it's surprisingly good for what it should be.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's wrap it back around the horn. Talk about
Petey, what are your standout tracks?
Yeah.
Well, I like I mentioned before, 1984, Julius Caesar, just for the instrumental and just the vibe. Watchmen and Between the World and Me. So let's wrap it back around the horn. Talk about some conclusive thoughts. David, what will be your conclusion at the end of the day?
This really worked. This really worked very well. If you're a fan of these, you're going to love this. I feel like there are one or two songs that might be for more than just people who are already fans of MC Lars and Mega Ran. One of them being Ozymandias. That song was done with some real purpose, and I feel like that is, as the kids say, a banger. I would say overall, aside from one song maybe that didn't quite work for me, everything on this is solid. It's fun, it's enjoyable, it's smart, it's accessible for someone who isn't an English major. It's accessible, and I would say that if you're remotely curious about nerdcore, this is one to check out. It's pretty easy to sit down and listen to for something that on paper would be so dense and so insular and so inside. It's really not. It's pretty easily enjoyable. You can play it and listen to it and not feel like you're lost.
Yeah. Drew, what would be your conclusion on this album as a whole?
If you've heard either of these two before, you know whether you like this album or not. I don't think I have to make a play to you to listen to this album. It's something that's already on your radar, because these two have their followings that are deserved, and you're going to listen to it regardless because you know they're great. For the people who haven't, there are two types of people I feel like that would stay away from this, and they're the people who don't like rap music and the people who don't like maybe nerdcore. And to me, those people need to give it a shot. Because one, what's smarter or what's in this record is smart and well done, and I think does stuff that maybe doesn't get enough of a shake in mainstream rap parlance. Now, I know probably with our listenership, I might be speaking to the choir at the moment. But I think it needs to be said. The other part is that I know a lot of people who don't go towards nerdcore because of the perceived corniness of it and stuff like that. But it's smarter than I think a lot of people will give it credit for. And especially this album, I think, shows what can be done when it's like, no, we're going to laser focus on a subject. That's why I point to like Black Materia and stuff like that. It's like, we're going to laser focus on something and we're going to like flesh that out in a really cool way and really think of it in a smart way. And I think that that's what this album does for a number of different pieces of literature, which I think is really cool.
Yeah. Roberto, what would be your conclusion on this album as a whole?
I mean, I'm definitely Drew on the, if you know Lars and you know Ran, you already know what you're going to get yourself into. If it came down to like new audiences, I don't know if this would be my first thing to recommend for them in nerdcore, depending on where they fall on the spectrum. Like if they're more, if they're not a fan of hip hop, but they're kind of geeky, there's other things I'd recommend. There's definitely some friends of mine who I'd say you should listen to this because I know you're going to get half of this and you're going to understand a lot of this, and already predisposed to hip hop in that regard. There's other albums I would give to certain groups like, oh, you're more into hip hop. Let me give you a copy of R&DM. Let me show you Samus. Let me do something else. Whereas, oh, you're more kind of the geeky side of things. Here, let me give you any Mega Ran album certain points, or let me give you some creative mind frames, other stuff like that.
Omega Sparks,
right? Because ultimately, I do agree this is accessible and anyone can hear it. I think, however, you get the most out of it if you're kind of not A, predisposed to these two artists, and more importantly, B, aware of, at least on a very tertiary way, of these works. Like even if you've never read 1984 or you've never read Gulliver's Travels or any of those sort of things, you at least are aware that these are books in literature and you kind of know the subject matter. And if you're really into those sort of things, you get that sort of deeper Easter egg meaning, if that makes any sense. Because I think this album's good. I think anyone can listen to it. I don't know if this would be the first thing I'd say. Here's nerdcore as the example, because there's so many, I think, better other albums that are better suited to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just looking in here. I found my name. I'm trying to find Roberto's name.
It's gonna be hard if I don't know where my name is. Let's see. Good.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm on there yet. I don't know if I'm on which level backer I'm at.
Yeah. We'd have to see. That being said, we'll take a moment to look. Yeah, this album it's a lot of basically what everyone has already said. It's a really fantastic showcase of what these two can do when they are given the opportunity to just go nuts on something that they love, specifically literature. You have a super nerdy fan of literature that loves hip hop and is super enthusiastic about it, and collaborating with one of his better friends that also loves literature, is a teacher, and like I said, a teacher, rapper, hero, who also has the chops to really bring you into whatever world he wants to bring you into, and put them together, and you have magic. You have a really great combination of something really cool. It's really creative. It's really fun. It's enthusiastic in all the best ways. You could call it corny, but I would take it as a compliment personally, just because It's corny in all the right ways. It embraces its corniness and its nerdiness, which is the one of the core tenets of nerdcore in general. Anyways, just embracing your truth, embracing your uncoolness, in a way, and I think that is what makes this beautiful and really cool and really fun. And I'm glad I was able to be a Kickstarter for the album. Yeah, it is fantastic. All right, let's get down to it. Let's get down to the main event of the evening. Well, the moment we've all been waiting for. Let's get down to the nitty gritty. The haiku reviews. It's fun time. I
forgot about this one.
Haikumuro numero uno. David, what is your haiku?
Lars and Mega Ran. Creative beats about books. A hip-hop rainbow.
Yes. Drew, what is your haiku?
But you don't have to take my word for it.
Yes. Drew, what is your haiku?
Now I want to hear LeVar Burton drop a verse. Oh, got to love these nerds. Dense with references and good lyrical flow.
Yes. Roberto, what is your haiku?
God, let's see if I can do this. Ditto on all said. Ran and Lars are amazing. Excellent album.
There you go. Off the dome. All right, my haiku. A lit hot banger. Two great MCs at their prime. It's no novelty. You can take that to the bank. For those are our thoughts on the Dewey Decibel System. You won't, if you're listening to this right after it's posted right away, you won't find this album on our Spotify playlist just yet. You can find it when it's released on June 7th of 2019, just in case you're listening to the far-flung future. If you are in the far-flung future, you can find it on our Spotify playlist. I will put it retroactively. But June 7th, 2019, you can pick up your own copy. You can look it up on Mega Ran's Bandcamp at megaranmusic.com. Look it up there. I believe you can also pre-order it if you wish. If you're listening to this ahead of time, just $10. Pre-order the album. It's yours. You can, of course, give more because that's how Bandcamp works. But yeah, go ahead and pre-order it. Or, like
as I always say, stream to preview, buy to support artists.
Yes. And then, of course, after it's released, I will go ahead and put it on the Spotify playlist in its proper place. On the Spotify playlist will be next week's record. I know that for sure. And it will be provided by David. David, what do you got for us next week?
The next record on the Record Breakers podcast, everybody, will be the brand new output from Polish rock band Riverside. And the album is called Wasteland.
So look forward to that next week. But that is next week. And this is this week. And you can, of course, find us all over the internet. David is at Call Me DJM. Drew is at XDruciferX. Roberto is at Vincent404. I'm at Petey Rave. The show is at 4 Record Breakers. That's the number 4 Record Breakers. RecordBreakersPodcast.com. RecordBreakersPodcast@gmail.com. Rebelli.net for this on other shows. Rebelli TV on YouTube. On other places. Find us everywhere you find podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, do all the things. Subscribe, like, share, do all the things. Until next time, hasta los huevos.
Oodle toot.
Bye.
I didn't know that much about Keats, I'm gonna be honest.
It's fine.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.